Hey everybody, Dave Danis with you, your radio guy from NMU Wildcat Hockey on 100.3 The Point. We're joined by Wildcat head coach Grant Potulny. And I tell you what, coach, one of the things I guess I learned back in my very early years of working professionally in the game was never say, now I've seen it all, because this has just been since about the middle of March, the goofiest postseason and off season we've ever seen.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at this its entirety, the impact it's had on not just, sporting world in our community, but globally is going to go down in history as, one of the most tragic, events and years in the world. And to be living through it and it's such an unprecedented time that, as much as, you start thinking, boy, I really want to play, and boy, we really want to do these things. We do understand the landscape is there's things that are beyond our control and are most certainly more important than getting back to playing hockey. But, that being said, I know the guys are chomping at the bit, and the coaches are, and, there's been some positive movement with Major League Baseball starting Friday. The bubble in the NBA and the NHL has gone well. So hopefully those guys continue to push forward and move towards an event and start playing some games. And, to give people, hope's the wrong word, but just to give people something to feel good about. And that's what sports can do in society.
Well, I'll tell you, let's go back to the finish of last year and a very tough playoff loss against Michigan Tech. And I know that was certainly a gut punch, but could you even imagine having been on that bus the next week, like Joey Sean and Michigan Tech, or Ty Agner and Bowling Green, and headed to that next playoff series all full of hope and whatnot, and to have to tell your team on the bus that this isn't going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do. Again, when it happened, it happened so quickly. I know, there's a couple teams in Marquette that were, the high school team and the Bantam team were heading downstate to the state tournaments. And, it was the night before they were supposed to leave. The high school team was actually there. I think their tournament was, right outside Detroit. They were actually there, and they had, they were getting ready for their banquet and all these things. And, they were told they were going to play on whatever Wednesday or whatever day that was. And, on Thursday, it just, the dominoes fell, and there's nothing you could do.
Well, I know you guys pretty well, between you and Byron and Robbie. And one thing I know is you guys are incredibly well prepared. And I would imagine that about the time that game ended against Michigan Tech, there wasn't much time taken off when you already were starting to put some things into action, moving toward this season. And I think part of that was trying to figure how to approach the summer with all this going on.
Well, at that point, and you're right. Like I think the biggest disappointment for us was, going through those injuries last year was, I've never seen anything like it. And then you're hopeful to turn the page and get to a point where we have a healthy team and you have a healthy program, and then the pandemic happens. And I honestly, Dave, I felt like when that was happening, and I think back to the initial quarantine, some of those Netflix shows and different things that everybody was doing, it seems like 9 years ago. And now I think that at that point, at least for myself, I thought this might be 2 or 3 weeks, and when you started, as it's going, the quarantine and the stay-at-home orders, really nationally, with the exception of a few places, kind of just keep getting extended. And now you see some areas, California and some other areas, extending again. It's really kind of adjusted what our plan was, because at our team meeting on Wednesday, I mentioned to the players that I was hopeful that there'd be a lot of them in town this summer, and being together, training with our strength coach who does a fantastic job, and just building that camaraderie and that base of what it is to be a team. And, now obviously with what's happened, guys are kind of spread across, North America and haven't had a chance to be together. And we're no different than everybody else. But it's just that part of it, has been different than what we talked about, and obviously for the right reasons.
Well, I tell you, one thing that I think has been a hallmark of this organization has been the level of communication, especially between you and the players, between the captains and the other players, and amongst themselves. And I chatted a bit with Ben Newhouse a few weeks ago, and the guys have all been in touch. They've all been talking. They've all been sharing their stories. They've been sharing, how they're going about it, how they're getting things done, their workouts and whatnot over the course of the summer. And that's got to be just something that portends very well for this team concept.
Yeah, we did we had a couple Zoom calls right away, and what we ended up doing is we kind of broke the team up into 6 platoons, and we had a lieutenant that ran every one of those platoons. And I asked the players, be honest with your group, be honest with your platoon, and here's there's 5 days or 7 days in the week, however you want to break it up. Report back. What'd you do this week? And not only what'd you do, to become a better athlete and training, but what else did you go fishing? Did you spend some time with your parents? Did you go see your grandmother? Just to kind of connect those platoons together, and then the lieutenants who led the platoons, they'd kind of report to each other. And I thought it was just a way that we could remove ourselves a little bit and kind of give this concept to the team that we always talk about. There's certain points where on really, really good teams, the coach kind of turns the team over to the room. And I'd like to try create that concept as soon as I can. And obviously early in the year, there needs to be a lot of guidance and leadership from the coaching staff. But the best teams are the ones that, internally kind of control their own room. And that was an opportunity for us during the summer, to grow some leadership. And we had 6 different platoons. So we had not just captains, we had, lots of guys that maybe even were underclassmen, in a leadership role. And, I try to have leadership meetings, every couple of weeks and grow guys and grow freshmen and grow sophomores. Because, just kind of being in that environment, having to have that leadership, and whether it's, there's times that we have guys that are in charge of the locker room. Like, hey, the locker room's your locker room this month. And, if Jeff walks through there and, there's tape on the floor, or there's something that, some guys' equipment's out of organization, we like to have everything organized in there. Then he talks to that person who's in charge of the room for that month, and the same thing for the weight room and different things. And now it's their responsibility to fix whatever the issue is. And it's just it's a good opportunity to grow leadership. And we had a chance to do that this year with with these platoons, and we did that. We've been doing that all summer, to be honest. And it's turned into we've had separate other Zoom calls as a staff. And then I asked I said to the guys, hey, you guys can do this without us. And Joe Nardi took the ball on that, and they've been having a couple of them. So I've been really pleased with the communication of the guys. And and the reality of it is, Dave, is here's what I said. I go, hey, we're all trying to become professionals. And, let me just tell you what it's going to be like when you leave here. You're going to get a program, and whatever team that assigns you is going to give you this program of what they expect you to do over the summer. But they're not going to check on you. They're not going to call you. If it's your responsibility to come back to camp in shape, it's your responsibility to come back to camp ready to go. And, that's this year's, it's almost a training ground for these guys that want to become pros, because that's exactly what the summer's like. You go home and it's on you to do what you need to do to get yourself prepared to come back to camp.
You mentioned guys like Joe Nardi, and one thing I've been impressed with, not only with the guys that have been wearing the letters on their chests, but really the depth of the leadership in that room. And I have to think that Joe is going to be one of those guys wearing a letter again this year. Has the team selected the captains for the upcoming year, or is that still in process?
I've kind of always, taken the thought process that, some years are different than other years. Sometimes you have a guy who's a returning captain, and you have, some different things, but I've always, in my mind, do I have some ideas of, who I think the leadership group is? Yeah, 100%. But there's a whole bunch of incoming guys who've never met these guys. And, I think it's important that they spend, a month, it's 6 weeks with the guys, and not necessarily to figure out who the captain is, but to figure out who supports him in this leadership group and who wears those letters. So, I've always liked to do those things at the start of the season that all the new players are going to be in. It just makes more sense to me than doing it at an outgoing moment, or doing it over the summer when there's guys that haven't even met, who their captain's going to be, or who the alternates are going to be. So that we, and usually, the coaches have an idea who they think the team's going to vote for. And the very few times does it go any other direction than what you actually think. So, but again, I want the guys to vote. It's their team. That's who they've chosen to lead them. And it goes back to that concept of, you want to give the team over to the room, and you want to have that leadership and responsibility within the room, and then the coaches just guide from the top of that.
Let's talk a little bit about, we always seem to focus on the players, but let's take a look at summertime, especially for the staff. Yourself, Byron Poole, Robbie Layton, and Jeff Cornock, the guys that are in there, 86 hours a week during the season. There's a lot of family time, and it's a chance to catch up and do some of those family things that you can't do during the year. How has this affected maybe, your summer family trip, or for Robbie or Byron? What kind of effect has this had on you and on your families?
I think anytime, something happens in life, and, we always have a saying, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And, and obviously this is, a trying time for everybody. But, we've used this opportunity because, I've been to the rink, boy, 2 or 3 times since March 8th due to the university being closed. And when I went in there, I had public safety open the door for me, and or I went in to look at the progress on the coach's office. So there's not a place for us to go, which is fine because we can do all our things, at home or from our computers or phones. But I've never lived in the same city as my parents or my wife's parents, and they happen to live in the same, they both live in Grand Forks. So, that whether it was, I left, you leave home at 18, and, I haven't really been back to, you see them at the lake cabin or you see them at Christmas, but it's so hard to get back and see them that, and obviously everybody's parents are getting older. So we've taken this time to really try spend real quality time around our family and friends, and, basically our family, I guess. So we spend a lot of time in North Dakota, whether it's Grand Forks or Fargo. We have a lot of family here, and it's been a real blessing that way. I actually said last night to my mom, I said, and we went out and the boys and I did a little work for my parents, a little rock work last night. I said, it'd be so nice to live in the same place that you guys are, and, spending this time together over quarantine. It's been really good for, my boys to be around their grandparents and me to be around family. So we've done that. I know Byron's, made a trip to see some old friends. And I just talked to Rob today, and he's got something coming up here that, some of his friends and him are going to go to a place in Green Bay. And, he went down to, they have a lake cabin in Traverse City. And, he said he hadn't been there about 10 years and, went down to see that. So, we've been taking advantage of that. Jeff's, I was over at his house the other day. He's doing some home projects, and, it's just, we've been busy, and, you try to do all those things on top of the, the recruiting duties and things that you have to continue to do. And that's been another, thing that's been interesting is how, this is, people have attacked recruiting during this quarantine.
I'll tell you, and that was an upcoming question, is it's obviously affected recruiting. When you get done with your season, you're you're hitting those junior tournaments, you're hitting those summer camps, you're hitting those showcases, and any chance you can get to go and see some players and make some contacts and shake some hands, and that hasn't been there in this off season. So how do you go about recruiting? I'd imagine there's a lot of video work involved.
Yeah, technology has been great. I mean, if you think about football recruiting, they've been ahead of us for a while, and you always hear about football coaches say, "We turn on the tape," and they'll recruit players off of video, and they might go see that. They might not even watch that athlete play football in person. They'll watch all the tape, and then their season's over, and they'll go watch that young man wrestle or play basketball or whatever it is. And now the technology in hockey's caught up, and there's the ability to watch all these players on video. So we did a ton of video work, like I'm sure other teams have also. But through that time and talking to coaches and different things, we've actually picked up a couple players this summer that will be joining us next year, through a Zoom calls, and had some other guys. We actually had a young man, drive to town. We couldn't see him, we couldn't be around him, but due to the recruiting rules, you could talk to him, but you couldn't see him physically face to face. What I tell all these guys in recruiting is, you have to see Marquette. I can tell you what it's like. Other people can tell you how great it is, but until you see it, you almost don't have a reference for it. So, we encourage everybody that we're recruiting to come up, and obviously the summer is a great time to come up. There was a young man who was in town, and you're right there. You could possibly bump into him if you happen to be all at the same place as they were, and obviously that didn't happen. But he took it on himself to him and his family to drive up to town, and we gave him kind of a little roadmap of what to look at and where to go, and we've been encouraging people to do that, because you can do all these Zoom meetings, and you really get to know these kids. And it's funny, like I was never a FaceTimer before this, and my wife did all the time, my kids do it, and I just didn't do it, for whatever reason. But after doing these Zoom calls and some of these things, I just think there's so much value in seeing somebody's face when you're talking to them, and it can grow your relationship exponentially versus just something over the phone. So, we've taken a Zoom call into a couple FaceTimes where it's maybe an individual with the player to another family Zoom, to a point where, that player is so comfortable with the staff that, kind of the only next steps are, hey, how's the community look? What does campus look like? He can do both of those things on his own. He can't, the kind of the final step is meeting the players, and obviously that's not, something that can happen, but, most hockey players are pretty similar. So if you could see all those, if you can go through all those other steps, a lot of families have been, feeling comfortable with taking that next step and committing to some schools.
Let's get a little deeper into the college hockey scene. Kind of an interesting year, college hockey-wise. We expected that, not necessarily this year, but we expected that St. Thomas in the Twin Cities would be making a transition to Division I, and it was just a matter of more when as opposed to if. And the NCAA has recently approved them to move up to Division I in all their sports on the fast track. And the surprise, and I talked with you, I talked with Jess Myers, who writes in the Twin Cities, and this is a guy who knows everything that's going on in college hockey. And when the announcement came that Long Island University had added hockey, nobody that I knew that knows the game, and I know the game pretty good, and nobody saw this coming. It was out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was, at first I think, there were some people that, to be honest, thought that maybe it was, that somebody had hacked into the university's Twitter feed and, put out some fake news. But, obviously it was something that they planned for and they were looking into. And, you hope that, they did all the proper steps on their end to understand what it's going to take to be competitive. And, we've had an interesting summer with, what's happened with Alabama Huntsville and their program folding, and then, garnering all that, all the donations to bring their program back. You've had the addition of Long Island. You've had the addition of St. Thomas. There's some people that thought that Illinois was, right on the cusp at the 1 yard line before the pandemic happened. So, anytime you can add teams and grow opportunities for players to continue to pursue their dream at the Division I level, it's a good thing for college hockey. And, hopefully, Long Island can kind of hit the ground and find a conference and, get into a place where they can have some sustainability.
We talk about St. Thomas, and of course, a lot of the chatter that goes around seems almost natural that they would eventually end up in the CCHA or the NCHC. But more importantly for Northern Michigan, Minnesota is one of your prime recruiting grounds. How does a 6th Division I team in the state of Minnesota affect, and how will that impact the recruiting game?
I don't know yet. I do know that St. Thomas is an attractive university, high academic standards. It's right in the heart of St. Paul. So, there's a lot of things that, they have going for them. For us, I don't know how much it'll affect that. We're very selective in kind of where we go and who we recruit. And, I think at the end of the day, the player that we would recruit to come to Northern is coming to Northern anyway. I don't know that he's, we're going to lose that guy to St. Thomas based on kind of like who we go after and how we recruit them and, who we are, and I think we're a different entity than what, a campus in the middle of a big city might be. So that's a tough question. I don't know. I mean, obviously there's going to be more opportunities for players, but I don't think it will negatively affect, us in much fashion.
That question, by the way, comes to us from Dan Klein out of Richfield, Minnesota. He's an NMU alum, and he's been in Alaska, now in Minnesota, and always gets a chance to see the Cats when he can. We'll go through a couple other fan questions here. Dougie down in Green Bay, he's seen a few of the Gamblers games down there. He wants to know what a 6'7" guy like Noah Gansky, the big D-man from Pat Miksh's club, can add to your team.
I think the biggest word that when you think about Noah is, you think about potential. And, guys that are that tall, typically they take some time to grow into their body and they have a couple of years that, of a little awkwardness. And, I've known Noah Gansky for, or since he's been a peewee. And, Noah was part of all those top teams in Minnesota. And, he was on, kind of the same trajectory as, some of those, Middlestat and some of those other guys. And then Noah grows, and he goes through this big growth spurt. And, in high school, he was a little gangly and a little bit awkward. And then he kind of gets his feet under him and, and he plays junior hockey, and then he moves to the USHL. And, each year he keeps adding more and more dimensions to his game. And, he's a smooth skater. He's long. He has the ability to generate offense. He's going to be a great addition to our program. And, I think probably what people can expect is, you watch those 4 freshman D last year and now, this year with the progressions they made towards the end, when Tanner Vesio got hurt, that was a huge blow to our program. And, going into the year, he was another guy that you kind of put in that potential category. And there were stretches that he was our best defenseman. So, the progression that he made, or Hank Sorensen made, or Mike Van Unen made, or Mason Palmer made, watching them when they start this year, how much their game has improved. That's something that we're hoping for Noah, that, he can kind of get his feet wet this year and, hopefully by the end of the year, turn into that player that we think he could be and kind of catapult himself into a sophomore year.
Yeah, I talked to Green Bay coach Pat Mikish a couple of times. Boy, the reports he gave me on Noah is that this kid's the real thing, and this kid's a great get for Northern Michigan. Yeah.
I mean, Pat's a real good friend, and somebody that's very helpful to the program. He was on us. He said, "Hey, you better come watch Noah because he's about to blow up, and we got down there and watched him, and Pat was right on.
Got to give a little tip to Pat, being from my hometown of Hancock, and just yesterday, his brother Scott Mickish was named the new head coach of the Hancock Bulldogs high school hockey team. So nice to see the home guys doing good there. Coming up from a couple other sources, we have Dave down in Lansing. Dave Ellis, who does our games for when they're on TV6, wants to know how the off-season practice times, especially like the captain's practices, how will that be affected at the start of school, and how will all of this stuff, the pandemic and stuff, affect the limited amount of ice time that the coaches are allowed with the players in preparation for the season?
Well, I think that's a great question. We've had some national calls, and we have a league call today after this, and as coaches, we're trying to have different start dates and different plans. So whatever that date becomes, if it right now we're as a body of coaches in the WCHA, we're working kind of back from worst case scenario is no sports. Then the next scenario is probably a January 1 start date. So we're trying to work backwards from that date. So we're organizing through January 1. To whether we have, amount of games, and, do you play your rival 4 times, travel schedule, some of those things, how are you going to do the playoffs? Are you going to have playoffs? Or are you just going to continue the regular season? And, if you do that, if they're all conference games, how nationally do we decide who makes the tournament? Because there's, obviously with no non-conference games, there's no pairwise. So, is it 2 bids per league with, 2 at-larges from the East and 2 at-larges from the West selected by a committee? If that's the case, then do you have to have a playoff? So, that would be our January, kind of plan. Is what we're trying to do is, presidents and athletic directors, as it goes up the food chain, right? So coaches are worried about our sport. And then it goes up to athletic directors, and they're worried about all the sports. And then it goes up to presidents, and they're worried about everything. So, we're trying to take the tack that if we can just get all of our ducks in a row and have plans based off of, when we're directed that we're able to go, then, I think that smooth transition will, hopefully give, a little bit of peace of mind to ADs or presidents that, okay, they have a plan for any of these start dates, and the next date, do you go to December 1? Do you have your October start date? Do you have a November start date? Aligned with basketball. Do you have a start date when the students that are non-athletes go home for break? So we're trying to come up with all these plans that can give peace of mind to people, making the decisions at higher levels that we're on top of it, and we do have a plan. So that's where we're focusing, a lot of our energy, and obviously if this, let's just say for argument's sake, this is a January 1 start date, as coaches, we have an internal plan on okay, that's a lot of time. How do you keep your guys fresh? How do you make sure they're in shape? You can't overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it. So there's, a few things that we got to continue to go through as a group to make sure that we're aware of the things that are possibly happening.
Another question comes to us from Marcia from Marquette, and Marcia asks, will we have a regular season, and what happened because of COVID? And I think you've gone over some of that here, and the next part of that was, when we do get to play, will fans be allowed to be at the rink? And I guess from my perspective, from where I see it, is it's way too far out to even know the answers to some of those questions. There's plans, there's suggestions, there's ideas, but whether there's a game on the 16th of October at the Barrie Event Center, and whether it's no fans or 500 fans or 3,500 fans, really at this point, 4 months out, we have no way of knowing.
Yeah, no, we don't. And, I think that, the biggest domino that'll fall is going to be, Power Five football conferences, what decisions they make. And, those are, I'm sure those are, within the next 7 to 10 days, there's going to be, some presidents at some of those levels have to make some decisions on how they're going to, approach the fall sports. And, obviously from that point on, how they, look at, fans versus, partly full versus no fans will, well, I would think would have to dictate, a little bit of what some of the winter sports do. So, the good thing for us is that we're kind of down the line a little bit, and we get to see how it goes with football first.
And one final question from the online category. This comes from Robert from Gaylord, Michigan. Robert wants to know, who was your favorite number 29 in your first season as head coach?
Robert, huh? That's I never got to call him by that. I should have been calling him Robert. When I was named the coach of this program, there's two guys and that whole senior class and that whole team, has got such a special place in my heart. But the two players that I think really drove that and were the glue were Robbie Payne, and Zach Diamantoni. Being around those two guys, kind of in life, like when you see somebody who's going to be successful. Those two guys, they're whatever they do, hockey, anything else in life, they're just fantastic people. I love having them around, and they come back every once in a while. And, they're exactly what you want in a player and what you want in a person.
And just that Robbie sent me that tweet, that kind of shows the kind of guy. Great sense of humor, terrific guy, always a smile on his face, and a terrific leader for this team. I know last season he got some all-star time in the ECHL with Adirondack as he put up 32 points over the course of the season. It's always good to see our former guys do well. Guys that came out this past season, any idea what will be happening with that small senior class?
Yeah, I do know that Phil Ballou has signed with the Iowa Wild, which is Minnesota Wild's American League team, which be a great opportunity for Phil. They were a very good team last year. So, obviously some of those players will either be moving on to the big club or maybe moving on to a different team that has come in and thinks they have an opportunity for them. So, it's a great place for Phil to be. Luke Volton signed with Reading in the ECHL. That just happened the last couple days. So a couple of those guys have moved forward. And, I know that Darian Craighead will be a great addition to any team that he joins.
And again, this is, we mentioned only 3 seniors last year, and it's a small senior class again this year. These guys, there's some guys in this organization that have some potential. We won't name names and pro scouting reports, but there's some players on this roster this year that really have some potential to do some things at the next level.
Yeah, and I think, as you're building a team, you're trying to build players that you think can help you be a good college hockey team first. But through that process, I think you identify some guys that you think have a chance to be pretty good pros. And and obviously, there's people paying attention because, as coaches, we've gotten many calls from, different NHL teams checking in on guys. And, as a player, sometimes, hearing that, hey, the Rangers called about you, or, whoever it is, at the right time, if that player's having a little bit of a down day, a down week, a down whatever, can really, boost that player's confidence and get them back into a good place mentally.
Well, I tell you, Coach, I know you've got a league meeting to get on to here today, and we really do appreciate your time and conversations going on around this crazy summer of college hockey, and hopefully we'll be sitting there in Madison in October getting this season rolling.
This is a great deal, and Thanks to everybody for organizing this, and Catherine and Dave and Derek, and hopefully you're right. Hopefully that we can find some sort of direction as a society to to cure this pandemic, and the byproduct of that is obviously games and fans in the stands. So that's hopefully where we're all going.
Coach Grant Potulny, thanks again. All the best to you and your family over the course of this, the rest of this summer. We look forward to seeing you as soon as we can.
Thanks, Dave. You too.
Wildcat head coach Grant Potulny, Dave Danis with you, your NMU hockey radio guy. We will have all your Cat games on 100.3 The Point again this season, and online as always. And of course, we appreciate the great fans of the NMU hockey Wildcats, the friends, the family, alumni, and all the great support you give us. And we look forward to a great 2020 season. We'll see you later. Thanks.